this weekend. So, guys, is Alabama a legitimate title contender? I believe this question needs some setting up. All right, so we have to remember that Alabama was coming off. I'm definitely a Bama hater. Yeah, on our Dre is our residential Alabama hater, but on Thursday, on our live show on Instagram, Dre is going to provide all his insight on why I'm assuming, doesn't think Alabama is a legitimate title contender. But guys, we got to remember where Alabama is coming from and what they're coming off of last season. Last season, they had a historic run to the college football playoff. After everyone wrote them off after their loss to Texas, they went on to go undefeated in the regular season, defeat number 1 Georgia in the SEC championship game, and they lost a nail biter in overtime to eventual champion Michigan. And you can argue that was the actual title game based on how Alabama played Michigan compared to how Washington fared against them. Alabama then loses Nick Saban to retirement, and they go on to lose 17 players in the transfer portal. A couple of those players being Roydell Williams, Caleb Downs. Sorry, not 17. Sorry, they lost 12 players in the portal. They also lost a couple players to the draft, i.e. Dallas Turner, Chris Branswell, the running back, I'm forgetting his name, but some returners from Chase McClellan, started running back, but they also have quite a bit of returners, Malachi Moore specifically on the defensive end, Kobe Prentice, Jalen Milroe, obviously. They also lost Isaiah Bond to Texas, another receiver. But they also lost Terran Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry as well to the draft. They're 2 starting cornerbacks from last year. But they still have Chris Haynes. They still have Jan Miller. They still have Jalen Milroe, like I said, on the offensive end for Alabama. They also have they're also bringing back the tight end, starting tight end from last year. I'm forgetting the brother's name. But there's still quite a bit of talent returning for Alabama, and obviously they have also brought in former Washington head coach Kalen DeBoer, and people are questioning whether or not Alabama has a legitimate chance of winning the national title this year. And I understand the question. I understand the cause for concern. There's a change of the regime. There are questions of whether Kalen DeBoer can transition from the Pac-12 to the best conference in football, the SEC. And there's a question of whether they can handle the rough and rugged schedule of the SEC now with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. And seeing that Alabama has to play not only Georgia, but also Texas and Oklahoma and Ole Miss and Auburn all in just the regular season, there's a lot of cause for concern. However, we have to understand something about Alabama, that what Nick Saban has implemented, what he has planted into Alabama, is something that won't be able to be uprooted just within one season. There's a level of standard and performance that Alabama's used to, and there are enough players within that organization, within that program still, that were recruited by Nick Saban, that were under that Nick Saban regime and that Nick Saban accountability culture. And based on what I've heard so far from my sources, there's not that much of a difference in terms of accountability for the culture between Kalen DeBoer and Nick Saban. And that's the big thing, especially with these college programs, is the level of accountability and the culture. It's something we talk about consistently, is that specifically for college programs, there has to be at least a 4 to 5 year window when a head coach comes into a new program to establish a culture and to bring in new recruits and to bring in his players. Obviously, NIL has affected that sort of time frame, the window, because now there's the transfer portal, and like I said, it's a little easier to bring in new players because of NIL. But for just a general benchmark, 4 to 5 years is around the time frame. And there are exceptions to that rule. The exceptions are if you have that team, that program already has high level talent, i.e. like Alabama. And will there be a little bit of a transitional curve for Alabama? Yes, but I don't think it'll be to the point where, one, they're not making the playoff, and two, they're not a legitimate title contender. I believe that Alabama is a legitimate title contender because whenever you're one of the top teams in SEC, you always have a legitimate chance of winning the national championship because it's the SEC, and people will honor and respect your strength of schedule. And sometimes that alone is enough to get you into the college football playoff. So the question then becomes, where does Alabama rank? Are they a top 4 team, or are they a top 10 team? Where does that rank? I do believe Alabama has a legitimate chance of being a top 4 team, but that that obviously entails that they will have to win the SEC. And will it be a difficult path for Alabama to win the SEC? I do believe so, but I believe it'll be a difficult path for Georgia. I believe it would be a difficult path for Texas to win SEC, just because there's so much talent in the SEC. It will be difficult for any team to win SEC. But I believe that Alabama, especially under Kalen DeBoer, when they start to hit their stride, when they start to find their rhythm at the right time in the season, to me, it won't matter if they have a bye or 2 byes in the college football playoff. It won't matter because they'll be playing at such a high level of intensity and such a rhythm. It won't matter who they're going up against. They'll still be able to perform well. The only thing that Alabama will have to worry about, just like any other team, is injury and health, and that remains to be seen. But after watching Alabama's spring game, and also from my sources, at least on the offense side of the ball, Jam Miller will be a name that a lot of people, not just in the SEC, but also in the country, will know by the end of the season. He's getting a lot of comparisons to Mark Ingram, while Chris Haynes is getting a lot of comparisons to a more agile version of Eddie Lacy. So that'd be interesting to see. And obviously Jalen Milroe is one of the best offensive players in the SEC. And I'm surprised to see that Jalen Milroe isn't on more Heisman watch lists going into the season. I believe that Kalen DeBoer will do an excellent job of tweaking Milroe's passing pocket presence, and obviously Jalen Milroe is going to continue to get better as well. And I won't be surprised if Milroe makes a huge leap to where he's in legitimate Heisman contention. Obviously they still have Kobe Prentice, and they brought in Washington's the top receiver, the second top receiver from Washington, who played behind Rome Odunze. Brought him in from Washington. And on the defense side of the ball, people are saying that Malachi Moore, who is going to his senior year, is no doubt the best player, the best secondary player on that defensive side of the ball. And from what my sources are telling me, the secondary as a whole, at both cornerback positions as well as at safety, Malachi Moore, they look primed to be a stout secondary. But the only cause for concern, if you want to call it that some people, including the sources that I have, that they have for Alabama is the linebacker position and the lack of experience there, especially with them losing, like I said, Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. But is Alabama a legitimate title contender? Yes, I believe they are, and I believe that their first real test obviously will be against Georgia, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by the outcome of that game. But we'll see. We're going to see come this Saturday against Western Kentucky the first glimpse of the Kalen DeBoer era in Alabama. And speaking of the first glimpse of that, what is the preview? What are we expecting to see in that game? Obviously, Alabama has a 97.4% chance of winning that game. Obviously, the game's in Tuscaloosa. Over/under is currently at 59.5, and the line has Alabama minus 31. So obviously, we're not expecting it to be a close game, but we are expecting to see perhaps a shell, or perhaps, like I said, a preview of what Alabama will be doing well, or what they intend to do well this season. So I expect in this game for Alabama to try to get Milroe into a rhythm early. I expect for them to get him a lot of quick passes, maybe a couple crossing routes or quick slants, or perhaps even a couple of out routes, or just quick action, quick plays to get him to a rhythm early in the passing game. And I expect a lot of interior runs for Alabama. Expect a lot of dives out of the pistol. If you do see inside runs, it'll most likely be zones, so a lot of cutbacks. But I expect more interior running this game. But I expect there to be a couple. Obviously, what Jalen Milroe does well is throwing the deep ball. So after they establish a run on the interior, expect a couple of deep balls off the play action, off of perhaps fake sweeps, setting up the deep ball for, like I said, perhaps Kobe Prentice or their other receivers. But I do expect them to really get Jalen Milroe into a rhythm early, especially in the passing game. That's why I expect the emphasis to be on the offense side of the ball, to get Milroe into a rhythm early in the passing game, getting quick, easy throws to build up his confidence through the deep ball. On the defense side of the ball, I expect there to be a lot of man. So that's something that DeBoer does well, or something DeBoer preached, just as Saban preached. A lot of man coverage, which has been a staple point under Saban in Alabama. DeBoer will do the same thing, a lot of man coverage. I expect, though, there to be a lot of pressure, a lot of blitzing from the outside linebackers. So I expect those blitzes to come from the outside as opposed from the inside. That was something that DeBoer did a lot of at Washington. So I expect him to bring that with him over here to Alabama. And in terms of the score, I say this score will be 41 to 10, Alabama. And I think people will be surprised by the passing attack of Alabama and just how big of a leap Milroe has made in this offseason. And, before we shut off, I do want to leave you guys with this little nugget that I heard from one of my sources, and that is Alabama is getting a lot more influence from Nick Saban than people expect. And what I mean when I say that is that do not be surprised over the course of this season when we start to see perhaps more Nick Saban in the locker room, more Nick Saban perhaps even around the facility. And Nick Saban still has his hand on this program in more ways than you would expect. And I'll leave it right there. But with that being said, guys, that is it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. Be sure to stick around for our show on Wednesday. We'll be back again same time tomorrow to preview some of the other top matchups of the week in college football. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Started by the Show. That way you can get access to all of our exclusive content. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/startedbytheshow/tip. And with that being said, guys, like I said, we'll be back again on Wednesday, same time, 1:30. Until then, guys, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and peace.